Primary Language Assessment by Gabriela Silva, Yasmin Mehadi, and Jessica Marquez. So, an English language learner is a term used for students whose primary home language is a language other than English and who have been identified as not yet fluent in using the English language. So it's a picture of California and the different populations of EL students in the state. The top 10 languages other than English in California are Spanish, Vietnamese, Mandarin, Filipino or Tagalog, Arabic, Cantonese, Korean, Hmong, Punjabi, and Russian. The Home Language Survey is a questionnaire given to parents or guardians that help schools and identify which students are potential English learners and who will require assessment of their English language to determine whether they are eligible for language assistance services. And that's an example of a home language survey in English. There are several languages on the California Department of Education website of the home language surveys. And okay, this is a flowchart of what happens after the home language survey. So parents or guardians fill out the home language survey on initial enrollment. If a student is a transfer, the school requests the home language survey from the previous school. And they have to find the initial home language survey in order to fully know what the student is. So if the student is English only, they're put in the mainstream program. If the student has any other language other than English on the home language survey, they have to be tested for CELT and the primary language assessment.
Fill out a home language survey at the time of the enrollment for school. They have to provide their primary home language on the survey. If their home language is not English, they will be assessed. They will get a primary language assessment. Primary language assessment have 4 sections: reading, writing, listening, speaking. The format of the primary language assessment is like CELT. The only difference between CELT is that CELT is done in English, but primary language assessment is done in students' home language. Students do not need to get tested every year. This assessment is done 30 days within the enrollment into the school, or 2 weeks after the student is being placed in the instructional program. At the time of the enrollment, student, if they can provide an official transcript from the native country, then they don't need to get assessment anymore. In the reading section of the primary language program, students need to analyze words. They will be given certain books, newspapers, or printed magazine. They need to locate and find certain words, and they need to analyze them. Student will be given a paragraph to read words from, and student would, after they read it to themselves silently, they have to read it out loud. And they have to retell whatever they wrote, and then that will be checked for understanding for the reading section of the assessment. In the writing section of the assessment, students will be assessed on their punctuation, capitalization, and correct grammar and spelling. They will be given a topic or a picture to write on their home language, and they have to write in detail. And they'll have to write down answers to why questions about the topic that they wrote about. Student will have to listen for information that is given in the classrooms, and they will be checked for comprehension, and they will be assisted on listening and comprehension of the information that they're given to. The student has to speak in words and sentences. They will be assessed on making conversation in their home language, and they have to tell a story, whichever they're comfortable with their story. They have to tell it in their own home language.
There are two important people who contributed to the primary language assessment: Dr. Anna F. Munoz and Dr. Richard W. Woodcock. Both W. Woodcock and Munoz have affiliation with the University of Southern California. Both Munoz and Woodcock created an assessment that was designed to measure ability and achievement of the language proficiency of English language learners. It was first published in 2005 and most recently revised. It allows for a wide range of ages to be tested. It measures reading, writing, listening, language, and comprehension. It is available for grades kinder through graduate school. It is funded to Title I, IDEA, and professional development. The uses for Woodcock-Munoz language survey varies. It assesses level of English language proficiency. It helps measure cognitive academic language proficiency. It also helps determine the eligibility for bilingual services at the school. It helps plan instructional programs, and it monitors their progress. It also helps evaluate their program effectiveness. There are sub-tests of the Woodcock-Munoz language survey. The assessment includes a quick and easy screener. It is a 7-section test which includes picture vocabulary, verbal analogies, letter-word identification, initial items and dictation, understanding directions, story recall, and passage comprehension. The picture vocabulary measures aspects of oral language. The verbal analogy measures the ability to reason. The letter-word identification measures letters and word identification skills. The initial items and dictation measures pre-writing skills. Understanding direction measures aspects of oral language. The task requires the subject to listen to a sequence of audio recorded instructions and then follow the directions by pointing to various objects in a colored picture. The story recall measures aspects of oral language. The task requires that the subject to recall complex stories that are presented using an audio recording. And finally, the passage comprehension measures how well a subject understands written discourse as it is being read. The comprehension items involve symbolic learning, pointing to the picture represented by a phrase and identifying a missing keyword in the context of that passage. The test ranges from approximately 25 to 55 minutes, and it has a Spanish and English form to keep records.
So the primary language assessment is important because it shows how strong of a foundation a student has in their native language, which is language 1 on this chart on the left. If students have a strong foundation in their native language, it is easier for students to learn or acquire a new language, language 2 on the right. The common underlying proficiency theory was developed by Jim Cummins. He believed that in the course of learning one language, a child acquires a set of skills and implicit metalinguistic knowledge that can be drawn upon when working in another language. So if you took 470, this is the iceberg, and this top part that's shown above the water, the Bix part, is the playground language, a common language, and the kelp is the academic language used in the classroom. And this part in the center in blue is the common underlying proficiency. So the primary language assessment helps in the classroom to know where they are in their own native language and see how well they will do in their second language, or English.